Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Big Four module. These are the four pillars of great copywriting. And before we start, I need to let you know that these modules are based on principles and strategies of persuasion and copywriting. They are applicable to every single industry that you can think of. However, because they are high level principles and strategies, the best way to consume this content and go through it is to think to yourself, how does this apply to me? How can I use this information in my industry? And what can I place of significance on the content that I'm seeing right now? So get out a pen and paper, make sure that you're actively participating in this, and don't be afraid to watch it a couple times to make sure that you understand all of the concepts. Without further ado, let's dive into the first of the big four pillars, which is target market. Here's our agenda for the day. First thing we're going to talk about is your avatar and why you're probably going to need more than one market avatar. I'll explain exactly what that is and how it pertains to you in just a moment. But after that, we're going to discuss the four W's, the who, the what, the when, and the where, and a bunch of questions that you can have along the way to define those pieces. And once we've gotten through the four W's, we're going to go to the fifth one, the why. You're going to ask yourself why a lot of this information you just collected on your avatar matters, and then dive deeper into their beliefs, their identifications, and the demographics and psychographics that make up that marketplace. Finally, we're going to put it together. And then I'm going to show you different ways to do research, whether it's starting with a product or maybe a service that you have in mind, whether it's starting with a marketplace that you want to serve and then finding out what you need to market for. Or if you're in the B2B space, how to research B2B companies, B2B prospects, and apply the same target market research that you would do for any other kind of marketplace. And finally, we're going to go through different steps that you can use to verify the initial research that you found and make sure that everything is accurate and usable. When I'm talking about your market avatar, I'm talking about an individual person and not what most businesses will immediately go to, which is a wide swath of people. For example, most businesses will tell you that their perfect ideal client is a man between the ages of 25 and 45 who lives in an urban center and makes over $100,000 a year. And while marketing speak makes that sound good, that's actually impossible for any person to identify a single human being that is inside that marketplace. Obviously, 25-year-old men are going to look different from 45-year-old men, and a person making $100,000 a year in New York City looks very different than a person making $20 million a year in New York City. And so wide swaths of people make it very, very difficult to market to in general, but in copywriting, it becomes almost impossible. For example, the woman on the left, you can immediately see that there are aspects of her personality and her lifestyle that are going to be more important to her than to a woman in her 60s or a woman who lives in another country or something to that effect. Same thing on the right. You see an individual who's dressed professionally, but also in an artistic way. You see an individual who's serious and wants to be taken seriously, but also cares about fashion. This person that you're marketing to matters more than the giant swaths of information that you try to collect on big target markets. And so when you're defining your avatar, you're going to very quickly find that your ideal prospect looks like a person, or in some cases, or in most people's cases, to be honest, it looks like multiple individual types of people. But when you define them to the level of detail we're going to go into today, you're going to have such an easier time communicating to that individual person in your marketing. And what happens is magical, because once you're communicating to an individual person, then people who look like that person are going to respond. People who look semi like that person are going to respond. People who see aspects of their personality in your market are going to respond. And in fact, you reach more people by zeroing in on a very specific individual person as your avatar than you would if you tried to go broad and hit everyone. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you're going to quickly see the power of this as we move through this module. This is a lot of information on the four W's, the who, what, when, and where. We're going to be sitting on this slide for a minute. Make sure you write them down, but there's also a PDF download in this module where you're going to get an entire bullet point list of all the different things that you can ask and look for these target markets. So don't get too stressed out about writing everything down. First, let's discuss the first piece of the four W's, the who, and essentially how you're defining this market avatar. First off, what is their age? And I'm not talking about that vague definition we talked about earlier. I'm talking about their specific age. Are they 24 years old? Are they 28 years old? What is their gender? What is their sex? As you know, in modern marketing, there are different personalities and different individualities where people define themselves based on their perceived gender and by their perceived sex. Whether you're marketing to that demographic or not, it's important to understand who you are talking to from that aspect. Also, their ethnicity. People's cultures matter. Where they come from matters. And understanding who you're talking to can help you cultivate a message not only of respect, but also of accuracy to a person that you want to work with. Same thing goes for their country and the language that they're from. If they're from the United States, but they originally speak French, or if they're living in the United States, but they originally speak Portuguese, that type of person is going to look very different than a native-born American who only speaks English, and vice versa. So when you're defining the who that this person is, it's important to be as accurate as possible to the individual. Now, you may have some people in mind already that are current or previous ideal prospects that you've dealt with in the past in your business. Those people are amazing places to start when constructing your avatar. You can immediately tell yourself that you've worked with Taylor, who was 42 years old and grew up in suburban Illinois, but has moved out to a farm in Nebraska. And they have a wife and they have a child, and you are speaking directly to them. They're a native born American. And that individual is very easy to see now that you're speaking to them. That's the importance of the who. It's very important to get those details down. The next part is the what. Now, this is when you're fleshing out this individual. If you have a person in mind already, then start to flesh them out in the way that you know about that person. But if you don't have a specific individual you've already met in mind, start building your avatar based on the information that you know already. What kind of sports are they into? What kind of politics do they typically follow? What does their family life look like, both their immediate nuclear family and their extended relative family? What is their current job? What kind of clothes do they wear? What kind of music do they listen to? What kind of education have they been exposed to? What is their sexuality? What is their entertainment values? And what do they go to have fun? What are their hobbies? What are their interests? How do they involve themselves in them? And then the dreams and goals and plans of this person all come together to give you a holistic view of an individual person. Now, you're quickly seeing that if you know this much about a market avatar already, it'll be very easy to create the kind of ads that speak to that person's values. And we will discuss values in a little bit, but we're going to move on to the when, because this is a very interesting way to think about your avatar. Some of you may have products or services that are more involved or have a longer buying cycle than others. So when you are doing the analysis on your avatar, it's important to understand when they are going to come into contact with one of your ads. So if this is something that you sell to people daily, as in a consumer product or an impulse buy or something like Starbucks coffee, that's something that would occur and be sold daily. Versus what if it's going to be bought in the next 30 days? It's something that someone considers about buying within the month, or it's something they buy every month but not daily. The when that your purchase occurs is going to help you define where that person is going to be in their lives chronologically when they start to consider your product. And just by putting this in the context of the individual you've just defined with the who and the what, you start to immediately see where your ad should fit in. The same goes for yearly purchases, 10-year purchases, impulse purchases, and seasonal purchases. You can probably see by now that if you have a product in mind or a service that you have in mind, you're going to be able to see where that decision takes place in this person's life once you've defined that person. And finally, the last W is where. Where are they currently living? What is the region, the city and town, the types of neighbors that they have, and the general environment that they have? This is relevant, and there's so many examples to give on every single one of these. For example, If you are a auto dealer and you sell cars, but you're running an ad in the middle of January in Montana, you're obviously going to run an ad with different themes than if it were in the middle of the summer in Florida. These types of considerations are things that people might think about offhand or if it comes to them. But when you apply these principles to every single advertisement that you write and have a person that you're writing to, it's going to make your advertising 100 times more effective than anything you've seen before. So consider these, make sure you've got different ideas written down for each one of them, and we're going to move on to the next section. This section is called Why, and this is about the emotional decision-making process of either perceiving or taking action from your ad. Now, over on the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see what's called the triune brain. This separates the human brain into three distinct sections. One of them being the neomammalian brain, which is what houses language and reasoning and all the things that make us humans. Below that, you see the paleomammalian brain, which is also known as the limbic system. This is what stores our emotions and interpersonal feelings. And below that, finally, you see the reptilian brain, which is the most basic type of cognition that a human being can engage in. This is where fear, this is where desire live, this is where reaction lives. If you throw up your face to protect your face against an incoming object, that's the reptilian brain taking action. You haven't emotionally considered protecting your face. You haven't logically debated protecting your face. You've simply taken the action because the reptilian brain saw something about to happen or occur or a potential threat. That's important to understand in our understanding of advertisements, because when someone encounters your ad, 99% of the time, they weren't expecting to encounter that ad. And so their brain will go through the process of understanding that ad from the bottom up. In the center, you see reaction and emotion and logic. That's exactly how the human brain will perceive your ad in that order. And so from a reaction standpoint, you're writing to give them a certain reaction, whether that's fear because you want them in a fearful mindset when you sell insurance, or desire because you want them in a desirous mindset when they buy a car. That initial reaction is important to consider when you're writing an advertisement. But the second, and almost instantaneously after that, is emotion. What emotion are they going to feel when they see your ad, and what kind of emotion does that are you trying to evoke? That's where on the left-hand side of your screen, you see that you need to understand it. You can try to evoke a certain emotion in an individual. And the better you understand them, based on the 4 W's we just discussed, you may be able to target more of the emotions by understanding them. However, we really don't have any way to control the emotion of every person who encounters our ad. All we can do, to the best of our ability, is understand how our ad is making them feel. And then at the very top, we have logic. We are now, with our ad and with the things that we're writing and communicating to our audience, giving them the logic to understand what just happened with them. So why is this important? Because when you think about your advertisement from this standpoint, a reaction initially that transforms into an emotion that you should understand, and then a logical reason to start engaging with the ad from an interest level, you'll start writing differently. You'll know that if your ad isn't being responded to at all, you're not getting a reaction. You know if you're getting negative feedback from the ad, you're getting a negative reaction, or maybe some emotion that you didn't account for. This is how to analyze your ad, this is how to plan your ad, and it's also how to optimize it after you've put it out and start thinking about the consequences and the actions that it's creating. The next section dives even deeper. Once you've figured out the 4 W's, the who, what, when, and where, and then you started thinking about the why of why you're writing the ad in the first place and how they're connecting with that, you start to get deeper into the target market's beliefs. Most people understand that everyone else has beliefs, but very few will actually go through the time to outline a specific type of belief that their target market has. And this goes from religion to values and community and media and on down the list. So each one of us has beliefs that we that we walk around with, that we espouse to people, that we keep unspoken within ourselves, that we talk very loudly about. We also have different things like defining events in our lives. We have different upbringings. We have different planted flags where we have publicly stated a specific type of opinion, and that makes us more likely to keep that opinion. We also even have subconscious beliefs that we may not even be aware of, and those could, of course, come from upbringing. They could come from our current work environment or our home environment. But the point being, understanding these beliefs within your target market is the key to truly discovering what is going to goad them into action and to make them a happy customer. One of the things to consider, even after you've done this, is not only what your prospects' beliefs are, but also what their beliefs are against, what they believe for and what they believe against. So if they are for a certain type of religion, are they also against a certain type, or do they have no opinion? If they're for a certain value, are they against another value? This is important to understand the for and against, because when you're writing an advertisement, if you know that you can get your target market's attention by showing that you have mutual values, or showing that you have a mutual community, or showing you have even a mutual education background, then that's something that they can link to and find common ground, and then therefore know, like, and trust you a little more. But it's also important to understand that if your prospect has a very strongly held belief against a certain thing, then you either should avoid that topic in your marketing, or if you also have a common belief against something, show that you have a common belief against it. Most people won't do this. Most people don't dig this far into their target avatar. But when you're really considering the individual that you picked with the 4 W's and the why behind their actions and their reaction to your ad, then this stuff becomes very, very important, and very important to write down for your target market. The same thing goes for identifications. Every human being will identify themselves in certain ways, and they'll also identify themselves against certain things. They have their own identity, their personal identity, which we call the self. They have identities for their family and what they consider to be appropriate for family identifications, roles within the family, things like that. And it escalates. It goes up to the community, it goes to the country and the state that they're living in, and it goes global. How do they identify as a national citizen? How do they identify as a traveler? How do they identify as a member of a certain small community? Or how do they identify with their family inside their family? Are they a sister, a brother, an aunt, an uncle, a father, a mother? All these things are identities that a person can have or will have in their life, but they also have certain identifications that they would be against. In this case, if they identify very strongly with not being a thing themselves, then that's something to consider with their marketing. If they consider themselves to be against a certain type of family definition or a certain type of community, then that's something to understand as well. Some people like to be outliers. Some people like to join countercultures. Some people like to define themselves outside of the status quo. By understanding those individuals that you're going to be marketing to, you can better communicate with them. You can write better ads to them. You can write more authentic ads to them. That means that they'll know you understand them at a deeper level than just a general marketer would. So let's put this together, because that's a lot of information to consider, okay? The first thing you're going to want to do is write down the who, the what, and the where with all of the different questions that we brought up in the beginning of this module. Those things are the demographic information of your ideal avatar. Now remember, you picked a specific age, you picked a specific gender if you had to for your product or service, you picked a location, you picked all sorts of details here. Write down as many as you can. Every single one of those are going to be potential things that you can target from using advertising on Facebook, on social media in general, on offline media where you find certain lists. There are countless opportunities to market to people. Most of those marketing opportunities are categorized using demographics. So keep those in mind, write them down, keep them close at hand, because you will be using them to target. The second way to compile this information, after you've got the who, the what, and the where into your demographics, is to go through psychographics. Now, psychographics are essentially how a person behaves and believes. So you're going to take that person's what, the when, the why, and their beliefs and identifications and put them into the psychographics column. All of that information is very, very relevant when they make these decisions, because not only can you target based on demographics, using the different marketing mediums that are out there, but you can also stipulate certain psychographics on different ad platforms. This is true across the board, and some ad platforms have better targeting than others. This is why we've stepped a little bit into the creepy era of marketing, because we can get so granular with these types of things. But imagine that you are your target market receiving an ad that's highly relevant to them, that is very well written from a perspective of knowing them as a person, and then genuinely offers a service that can help them. That's what advertising should be, and that's why this type of research is very important. So put everything, the what, the when, the why, the beliefs, and identifications into your psychographic column so that you can not only target using highly leveraged targeting, Facebook ads, Google Analytics, YouTube, things like that, certain types of direct mail, but also just for your own ad writing, just so you know how to communicate with these people from their behavior and belief levels. For the live research component, look beneath this module and you'll see full videos on how to do each piece of product, market, or B2B based research. This last section is called Verify. Up until this point, you've done a lot of legwork in order to figure out the 4 W's, the why the person is making a decision, and really dig down and identify the person's identifications and values and beliefs. And then you've sorted them into demographics and psychographics. Now that you've done all this legwork on the front end, it's time to verify any assumptions that you made, any information that you found, and we do that through several different ways. The first way, and the way that I really prefer, is to do interviews or canvassing or surveys. Now, interviews are one-on-one or extremely small group, but I would ask you to try to do one-on-one because people are more honest with one-on-one, especially if they know that no one is going to be judging them for that interview. So if you can get an ideal prospect or 2 or 5 or even 10 interviews with your ideal prospect, your avatar that you chose, that's going to help you verify every single piece of information that you just gathered. The same thing could happen with canvassing. This is where you stand in a location where you think your target market avatar is going to be, or you go to an event where they are going to be, and you just start asking verification questions. If you are uncertain about a value that they have, you could ask them about that value. You could ask them about their activity. You could ask them about why they're interested in a certain thing. That canvassing is going to give you a lot of good information, not only on the types of questions that you're asking, but also the avatar, their behavior, and their interest level in the types of questions you're asking. It's invaluable information. Now, the third thing is the surveys. You can send out surveys to people, whether they're incentivized or not incentivized, meaning whether they have a reason to answer the survey, as in a monetary reward or a prize or some sort of thing that you're giving them, or non-incentivized, where you're just asking them specific questions of the target market, and some people will answer and some people won't. Those are my favorite ways to verify the information you just researched. The next way to do it, especially if you're short on time, or if you're not quite certain that you want to go with this avatar or not and put the time and effort into interviews or canvassing or surveys, is to look at research studies and data. If someone has already studied a certain marketplace or has broken things down into certain demographics or psychographics, there's probably going to be research that's available on the internet already. You can go to Google Scholar. That's one of the places where they house tons of scholarly articles. And there's lots and lots of aggregator websites like Forrester and Harvard Business Review, et cetera, who do research for a job. That is their position. They share the information. Sometimes they sell the information, and if you find that it's valuable enough to buy that information, you can. But it's best to look for those first-party data sources, the people who've done the research already. Maybe they've run surveys or canvassing, and you're just purchasing their work or reading the free work that they publish. That's the next best thing besides actually doing in-person interviews or canvassing or surveys. The third way to do it, which is completely viable, is to jump into forums or groups of your avatar, of your ideal avatar. The forums and the groups are where they gather, where they communicate with each other, where they ask questions, and there's certain larger forums like Quora or Yahoo Answers that would be able to give you generalized information or more specific questions that are being asked on bigger topics. But then there's millions and millions of different sub forums and smaller niche forums and groups on Facebook and LinkedIn and other places where people message. So if you can dig into where your avatar is right now, online and offline, and then go to those groups, whether online or offline, you're going to learn a ton of good information just from forums and groups. The last thing that I would do to verify is to try to find examples of your ideal avatar on social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or YouTube if they're publishing on YouTube, or LinkedIn if they're a person on LinkedIn. Those platforms are going to allow you to go and look and verify some of your assumptions about the 4Ws, the why they're making decisions, things they're buying, their beliefs and their identifications, just simply by clicking through and finding those individuals on social media. That's my least favorite because certain people share certain things. Lots of profiles are private. You might not be able to find things if you're going after high-level decision makers because they tend to stay off of social media. But if you don't have the ability or don't have the time to do any of the previous three, then social spying is a very viable way to verify the information that you just found in this module.